Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. The way of the future, the way of the future. The way of. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. People with obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. What are some of your rituals and habits? Number 1. Commenter. I always check if my door is locked. I will lock and unlock it a couple times to make sure. Another ritual is making sure both my eyes close at the same time while trying to sleep. I feel very uncomfortable if I open one eye, then close it. Then I have to open both, then close both. One last habit I have is after pouring the milk into my cereal, I take a spoonful and eat it before walking it over to the dining room and table. Person B. I do the eye thing too. I like everything to feel equal or even. Scratch one hand because of an itch. Better scratch both arms entirely so nothing is off balance. Commenter. The door thing is paranoia at best. But it doesn't impede me in the slightest since I've gotten used to my rituals. Number 2. Commenter. Every trash day, I make it an effort to take a warm wet towel or cloth and wipe down everywhere I've touched. After every shower, I do the same thing. I'll wipe down where I touched because I know I used to type with dirty hands before the shower or worn headphones after lawn mowing, etc. Wash hands when I touch something I think has had a dirty history to it. If it makes my hands feel grimy or something else that isn't how my hands normally feel, I wash them. Person B. Can you shake hands or hug people when you greet them? Commenter. Yes. Number 3. I click my toes just like when you snap your fingers. Has to be an even number of times, until it feels right. Some days when I'm feeling off I'll have blisters between them from clicking so many times. I also have a tic where I touch my nose, one side, then the other, back to the first side, over and over and over. When I was really unwell I had to constantly change the bed sheets. My kids couldn't leave the clean bathroom after bath time until their rooms were clean enough for them and their sheets were fresh. Or I'd wake everyone in the house up to vacuum the bedrooms and change the sheets. Number 4. Commenter. As a teenager who struggles with it, I've learned to just suffer the feeling of burning alive or full body muscle tension when I don't fulfill one of my habits or tics. It's slowly getting less intense. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without my mother, who has taken 40 years to do what I've done in 17, thanks to her, to at least have self-control. Person B. It does get less intense. It's very much like cigarette cravings when you quit smoking. Unfortunately, there are still always certain times when it creeps up from the back of your mind. Commenter. Whenever I find myself giving into the habits and tics I tend to use loud music to help. Metal helps best, but a second best is punk. Rap makes it a hell of a lot worse, but I can listen to it when I'm not having issues. Number 5. Commenter. I have to focus on locking the doors every night. Even if I pay attention, by the time I get to the last door I question whether the first one is locked and have to do it all over again. Towels have to be folded a specific way and stacked in order. I have to check the rooms indoors before I leave and make sure they are closed or opened. Usually have to do it a few times. I will drive back home if I keep questioning it. When running errands, everything has to be accomplished on the same day. It may take 1 hour or 8. When I get home everything needs to be properly put away regardless of how tired I am. Thankfully things have been regulated with proper meds. I still have to do things a certain way, but I'm learning to relax. OCD is an accounting thing, it's the need for things to be done a certain way and straying from the routine makes you very anxious. Panic attacks because the brown towel is in the stack of tanks is not fun. Person B. Have you ever left home and driven back to make sure the doors were locked or if the stove was off? Commenter. Yes. Never been much of a stove person, but I did go through a stage where I thought I hit the knob and turned the gas on. For me it all revolved around worry and setting ridiculous task lists. I would make a huge to-do list every day and then punish myself if I didn't complete everything. I wasn't allowed to relax unless I earned it. It took 2 years of therapy to tone down the list making it a self-punishment. Number 6. When my right foot hits the floor, I have to snap with my right hand. When my left foot hits the floor, I have to snap with my left. Does anyone remember the Cup song? From Pitch Perfect? Well, for about an hour a day I will do it with my eyes, blinking and winking and moving them around in order to get it perfectly right. When I get home from school, I have to step through the door right foot first, and then continue walking left-right until I've made it to the living room. Then, I do a swift turn and repeat it all the way back to the door. If it isn't perfect, I have failed and must try again. I have crazy anxiety that my car is going to crash. To prevent the crash from happening, I must tap the ceiling of the car 5 times, count to 30, stomp on the floor 10 times, and open and close the window twice. Then I may turn the car on. Hope I gave you some insight into obsessive compulsive disorder. Number 7. Commenter. Where to begin? Series of repetitions apply to all of my OCD. I have already looked at this page 3 times. I reopened my app 5 times, and I have scrolled to the bottom and back up 7 times. The 357 pattern is somehow comforting. Light switches are a terrible nemesis. They have been for endless years. I can't pass a light switch which requires turning on or turning off without switching it 3, 7, or 13 times. I have no idea why I like these 3 numbers, but somehow having specific odd numbers gives me a sense of security in that there's always an extra should one be lost, corrupted, or somehow ineligible. I have broken many light switches. I absolutely must step on all sidewalk cracks. It diversifies my risk of falling if the sidewalk I am 50% standing on should plummet to hell beneath my feet. But the worst is breathing. Maybe 15 or so years ago, I developed a bizarre OCD twist in that I felt compelled to hold my breath until I could exhale it while looking at something or doing something in an OCD compliant way. For example, I have to look at all 4 corners of the bed before I can exhale before I get into bed at night. Or all 4 sides of my car before I can get in it. It is as if the very act of exhaling breath before I can complete a numerical sequence will cause my mind discomfort. As I am typing this, I hold my breath until the period of each sentence is complete. From the way I pick up my fork at dinner to the number of times I stack a paper before stapling it, 7 times with an overlap of 3, very precise, these bizarre OCD sequences permeate literally everything I do and are sometimes very time-consuming. I have not taken any action in years and years that was free of it. And yet it somehow does not really bother me. About 10 years ago, I gave up struggling against it and now just regulate everything I do according to an inexplicable sequential protocol. Everything carries out according to an individual numerical protocol. Each action I take or task I perform has a number of numbers associated with it that sets my mind at ease. It adds time onto each day. How I have grown to hate opening up my sock drawer, but it's just a strange way of life. I have other more common OCD tics, such as a generalized phobia of germs and a burning need to wash my hands after coming in contact with something I have mentally flagged as unsanitary or unclean, such as a doorknob or a sick person. But the sequencing really gets me and causes much more stress and functional delay than anything else. At one point years ago I was counting up to 37 on everything. Fortunately, this usually doesn't prevent me from living a relatively functional life, and because it's all internal, few people know what's going on. For example, if I take a moment too long to open a can, someone may simply assume I am reading the label or thinking about a recipe. Professionally, I control and utilize my OCD at work, where it enables me to do some very precise tax work with great accuracy. And because I have given over to my OCD fully, I actually experience no stress from the compulsions, and I have no anxiety over anything else in my life, which means that I am a low-stress individual. But full OCD compliance requires me to be at inherently high tension, which is different from anxiety, beneath the surface at all times. I truly do not know what the future holds, but each day, I pray that I will not have to turn off any more light switches than I absolutely have to. Person B. Very interesting, because my habits are almost opposite from yours. My pattern is 4-6-8, everything has to be in 4s and 8s, and I absolutely cannot step on cracks or I get an uncomfortable, itchy feeling in my feet. Commenter. It truly is a fascinating affliction. I know what you mean about the itchy feet. For me it's a burning sensation when I have touched something dirty or germy, which continues until I wash my hands. It is very interesting how each of us has typical yet entirely unique symptoms. Person C. Can I ask you about medication? Have you ever been treated? I am afraid of losing that edge for the same reason you seem to be. The advantage that it provides you in your tax business is helpful. In other aspects, it ruins things for me. Commenter. I have never been formally diagnosed or treated in any way, so I have no idea what would happen. My immune system has major allergies and issues with a lot of prescriptions and vaccines, so I have been instructed by a specialist only to take medication absolutely essential to my survival. Crazy ironic, I know, haha. Number 8. My biggest one probably is that I knock on door frames twice when I enter a room. I also have to pray in a bathroom stall before I board an airplane. I'm not religious at all, fui you. Otherwise, it just depends. I'll get incredibly anxious if things aren't done a certain way, and have to redo them again and again, Mostly cleanliness stuff, hand washing, washing clothes, dishes, etc. Number 9. It used to be a lot worse when I was younger, but I've learned to control it better with being less anxious. The one I don't do at all anymore is that I used to hawk a loogie every time I would see something that grossed me out. In my mind it was like I was purifying my thoughts or something by getting out all the bad stuff. I grew up in a smoking household and hated it, and so everyone I would see a cigarette I would hawk a loogie and spit it down the bathroom sink. It sounds weird, I know, but it made sense in my 5-year-old kind. The other one that I still sometimes do but not nearly as often is get things in fours, but it also has to be symmetrical. So if I bump my left finger the wrong way I have to bump my right finger twice, then my left finger again. This closes up the problem and puts it at 4. If it got really bad I would have to close up in a bigger way. So it would be like bumping with my left, then right twice, then left, then repeating that but starting with my right, then left twice, then right, then do that again, and follow up at starting with my left, right twice, then left to close the full loop. Not sure if I explained that right, but it's one of those things that makes sense in your heart but not when you explain it, kinda like dreams. Number 10. I touch doorknobs the same way each time I pass them. If I mess up, I need to start. If I'm particularly stressed I'll check locks several times. I'll walk into the kitchen just to make sure all cupboards, drawers, etc. are closed. Clothing must be folded in a certain way. Numbers that are multiples of 5 are good numbers. Odd numbers are generally bad. Everything in my room has a very specific place, and if that were to change when I wasn't present, I would notice almost immediately and fix it. For instance, all of my medications sit in a box arranged in a certain order. Each one is in a specific place and each one has a colored dot on top so I know which is which. I can glance at it and tell if they're in the right spot. Things can't be hanging off tables. I'm always afraid they'll fall off. After I say something I have a tendency to repeat the last word over and over again under my breath. This can go on for an hour or longer. I'm sure there are more. These are just the ones I can remember right now. Number 11. I type in my head. It's been pretty constant for the last 10 years or so, and I've pretty much given up on stopping at this point. It's like a virtual keyboard in my head and words that I see and hear get typed out. I try to balance the number of letters that would be typed by the left and right hand, so sometimes it can be distracting, but for the most part, it's like a background process in my brain. I had a terrible compulsion when I was a teenager, though that messed me up a little. My mom commuted, and I was convinced that if the last words I spoke to her when she left in the morning weren't "I love you," then she was going to get in a car crash and die. Doesn't seem too terrible until you miss a morning and have a complete mental breakdown. It was before I had a cell phone too, so I had no immediate way of contacting her. It was not a pleasant experience. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.